Okay, let's do this. I tried my hardest to jam this into 60 seconds. I just couldn't do it. I can't talk fast enough. But the debunking of the rapture view. Number 2, we want to talk about the last trumpet. Some say that the last trumpet of 1 Corinthians 15 is the last trumpet, and therefore there can't be a rapture and a second coming because the last trumpet is the end of the age at the second coming. The problem with that is that the trumpet, the last trumpet, is not indicative of the second coming. In fact, when you look at the trumpet call in the Old Testament, we see that there is lots of last trumpets. There's the last trumpet before getting ready to move the tabernacle. Then there's another last trumpet when you move the tabernacle. And then there's another last trumpet when you end the moving of the tabernacle. And then every time that this happens, there's a last trumpet. And so it's not really indicative of this is the end of the age, this is the last trumpet. But the last trumpet is literally signifying the end of the church age in 1 Corinthians 15 and the beginning of the tribulation period. It is a last trump call for the bride of Christ. It is a trump of God, whereas the trumpets during the tribulation and the end times are trumpets of angels. The 7 angels are sounding the trumpet. And it doesn't say that that it's the last trumpet. It says that it's the 7th trump. And it's not really even the end of the age because more judgments come after that. And so it's a trumpet of God and not angels. In 1 Thessalonians, the trump is a trump before the resurrection. And in Revelation, we see a trumpet sounded after the 2 witnesses are resurrected. We see the sounding of the trumpets. The trumpet in 1 Thessalonians is a trumpet of blessing. And we see in Revelation when it's talking about a trumpet, it's talking about a trumpet that is associated with earthquake and fear, not blessing and comfort as we see in 1 Thessalonians. The trumpet at the rapture is a blast, a single blast of a trumpet. The trumpets in Revelation are soundings of judgment that last for days. The trumpet in 1 Thessalonians for the rapture and in 1 Corinthians is the trumpet, the last call or last order to the church. The trumpet of the rapture is a trumpet of us being taken to be with the Lord, not gathered for judgment, not a gathering of people for the sheep and the goats judgment after the second coming at the beginning of the millennial kingdom. And the context of the last trump that Apostle Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians 15 is the context of the church, not of tribulation that we see in Revelation. So it's a totally different context. So to say that because it's the last trump, it must be the second coming and the end of the age, and there is no rapture before that, it's the last. That's not exactly indicative of that trumpet, and there's nowhere that you can find in the Bible that there is a last trumpet associated with the second coming. If anything, the last trumpet would be associated with the resurrection and the judgment at the end of the millennial period and the end of time as we know it before going into eternity, where the new heaven and the new earth come into play. The old heaven and the old earth are burned up, as Peter says, and there's a new heaven and new earth. So if there was a last trumpet, that would be the time for it, not the last trumpet of the second coming. So therefore, I think that, if anything, debunks the view that because 1 Corinthians says it's at the last trumpet, case settled, second coming, no rapture. That's not exactly true.